Hi, my name is Andy Van Zant. I'm a professional board game developer. I worked for TMG for about 5 years, and now I do freelance development for a few different companies. I figured during this coronavirus lockdown, it might be interesting to take a look at older board game designs through the lens of modern development. And so when I'm talking about these games, it's important to keep in mind that these criticisms aren't really criticisms. It's more comparing and contrasting the choices that were made when the board game was originally published versus what I think you would do nowadays if you were to design the product for modern audiences. And today I'd like to talk about Timber Tom, which is from 2008. It is a lighter game. It is a family weight game. So let's take a look at the packaging first, right? So this is a giant box. This is too big to fit in a collapsed shelf, which is a minus more often than it is a plus. It means that a store will often not be able to display it normally, and sometimes it'll get put in a slightly better position, like on an end cap or something, but more frequently it'll get shoved at the very top of a shelf where it's hard to reach, hard to see, and probably not facing out. It'll probably be laying flat on top of a shelf because it can't fit otherwise. But I say that, and it's important to keep in mind that this game was primarily sold online rather than through stores. It was sold directly. And on top of that, a big part of it was that it was sold for $45, $45 US, and that included shipping. And you'll see why that's such a big deal here in a second. But I'll keep talking about the packaging here. So we've got a really big box. I think that's a negative in general. I would try and shrink that down. You'll see why it's big here when we get into the box. It's got a border, which I've mentioned before, kind of indicates that it's an older title. You don't see that as often on newer titles, and when you do, it's usually from a company that is much older. Um, the box itself is fine. The title is prominent and readable. We've got some basic information here. We've got some words that people are going to skim over if they even recognize them at all. The side of our box has the same info repeated, which is good. The back of the box is good. It shows has component shots, multiples of them, and that's really great. I would not have made them as big as they are because these are much bigger than the actual components are, so it kind of gives a false expectation. Um, and this text is way too long because we've got text here and we've got this in the box and we've got this blurb here. And people in general are never going to get that far when it's a product on a shelf. And even when you're talking about, oh, this is being sold directly, well, nobody's going to see it because because they're going to not be purchasing this product based on the back of the box when it's sold online. So when you're talking about the back of the box, you're talking about it functions in a retail environment, and this needs to be shorter. So we're going to open up the box here, and you may have already noticed that this box is essentially cardstock. It's C1S coated one side, cardstock, and inside this box is another box. So we've got the interior box. So that the exterior is more like a box sleeve in that it's holding something else, except that it's integral to the packaging. Because so we've got this cover here, but this interior box has nothing on the back side, and it's actually split in two. It is the sleeve, the cardstock is necessary in order to keep these two pieces together. So inside of this, in the bottom half of the box, we've got a foam insert, and this is a super nice insert. The It keeps stuff from rattling around, protects things during shipping, but it's also used for storage and organization of components afterwards. So it's a very nice insert. On top of that, so we've got this lift out half box here containing some of the components, and it even has names of where the different bits go. So extremely nice. We've got another box here. This box actually just has the plastic trees in it. Um, and it's plastic trees. And that's so that you can pass this around the table and people can take stuff out of it. Same with this, even though this doesn't really need to be passed around the table because a lot of this stuff you can just take out at the beginning and it can sit in a pile and people can take from it. But it's nice, right? It's nice to have these nice things. So we've got plastic pieces. There are gold bags. There's a custom dice. There's hiker pawns, the player pawns. There are supply barrels. They even say supply on the top of them. There's a deck of cards. The deck of cards is fine. It's linen texture, and the graphic design is fine on them. They say what they do. The graphic design on these tokens is nice. They say what they do, and they also have symbology. Um, these are the player boards. These are multi-layered player boards, and they're designed for you to be able to fit your stuff inside of them, like that. So these are all very nice and very usable. It tells you where everything goes and even has some reminder text on it. So you may have noticed that this game has very high production value, especially for the $45 it costs, including shipping, to get it to you, and that's kind of an indicator. That's where we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but very high production values. Um, Plastic, lots of extra packaging, and when I'm talking about these boxes here, it's important to remember that in a lot of games, if there's not a folding board in the game, the box is probably the single most expensive component in the game. So when you've got these extra boxes, we've got a tuck box, we've got the string box, and we've got essentially a half a box here that lifts out. Um, that's adding a lot of cost to the game, and that's on top of these plastics and this dual layered board here and this custom foam core insert. And then on top of that, so we've got the top half of the box here. It is actually a whole nother box. So we've got so many boxes in this game. There's essentially 6 boxes in this game, and that's very nice. But I'll explain why that can be problematic too. So this is the game board. This is the reason why the box is as big as it is. It is a layered game board. It is foam core with cardstock on top. It's got holes that you put the hikers and the trees into so they move around. Again, the graphic design is very clear on here. So there's a hole right in the helipad thing, so you know that this guy has to be right there in order to use that. And the goal of the game is to move around to these different peaks and pick up the gold sacks, and the first person to pick them all up wins. So it's about efficiency and movement, moving around the board. And during the course of that, you'll be planting trees and chopping down trees and radioing for help and using supplies. Right. Um, it is like I mentioned before, a family weight game, and the rules are pretty simple. So let's talk about the rules. The game comes with this quick reference card, which is useful. It's got a lot of text on it, but more importantly, here's the game guide, the rule book, and this rule book is 20 pages long, and it's a family weight game that explains in about 60 seconds. Um, but on top of that, so it's a little wordy. It's nicely laid out, like the pages have good breakouts and diagrams. But if you look, so we've got first move landing scenario, base camp, first move, move and tree values, moving rules for your hiker. There's even more moving rules throughout, and that's just the moving part, not even the other pieces. Is spread throughout the rule book in a bunch of different sections. So if you have a question about rules, you're going to be looking on so many different pages just to figure out the answer to your question. So the rules are too long for the overall weight of the game and for the audience of the game. And on top of that, they are not laid out in a concise and friendly manner for use of the rule book after you've learned or taught the game. Uh, so uh, I'm going to kind of bring some of these aspects together. We've got the rule book needs to be more concise. You could probably get that down to an 8-page rule book, maybe even less. Probably if you this rule book is weirdly small for the box. If the rule book was a little bit bigger, you could probably get it to a 4-page rule book and be much more friendly for your audience. Uh, the cost of the game is obviously because the production value is super high, but there is only one version of this game. This is not the deluxe version. This is the only version of this game, and it's a family weight game, and that's why they had to sell it online for $45, because if you were to go through a store with this product, you would probably be looking at 100, 120, maybe more than that in cost. And you could still have some really nice presentation value on this game and have it be affordable, uh, or at least affordable enough for store shelves. You could still have these plastic bits, and you could even still have this topographical board if you divided it up and puzzled it together instead of having it be a single piece. So there are ways to bring the cost down, and obviously the biggest way to bring the cost down is lowering the packaging, because there's so much cost tied up here in packaging, which is great. It makes the game feel like you're getting a deluxe experience. But when that means that you can never sell this in stores, you're just cutting out your audience, and there's not a good reason to do that, especially for family games. Like people who are enthusiasts will seek out games. That's an important part of the modern market is Kickstarter is people essentially seeking out games in venues other than stores. But family gamers a lot of times are not looking for that level of depth to their research and to their understanding of the market and things like that, and trying to seek out things in non-standard places. That they're often wanting to go just to their local comic shop or the local big box store and seeing something cool on a shelf and picking it up. And so when you've got something that would have to be $100 on a shelf, they're not going to just casually pick this up. And uh, since you're selling it directly, you're putting hurdles in front of this family market that this game is designed for. And rearrange the rule book and the quick reference card. And for how nice the graphic design is on the board and how usable it is, and the tiles and the cards, it's weird that the rule book is it's not haphazard, but it is not laid out in a user-friendly way. Um, and I think that's odd. So I would do some work on that. Um, Game mechanics wise, I think this could be a game that could be on store shelves. I would probably do some things to work on the base length of the game. It is a little bit long for the decision space, and so I would actually probably shrink this board some to make the game a little shorter. And you can control it. You can say, oh, let's only play to 3 bags or only to 2 bags. Most people are going to look at this board and want to do all four. So I would set it up so that that was the base thing, that you're doing all four, but that the board is a little bit shrunk. And so that's another way you could make this box smaller and more shelf friendly for retailers and for consumers. So I hope that that was interesting to you. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you later.